The Golden Cage. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the Blackwood mansion as Victoria Sterling adjusted her emerald silk dress, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. At 6 weeks pregnant, she hadn't yet shared the news with Marcus, wanting tonight's anniversary celebration to be perfect before revealing their miracle. "Darling, you look absolutely radiant." Marcus Blackwood appeared behind her, his reflection joining hers in the ornate mirror. His hands settled on her shoulders, and for a moment, Victoria felt the familiar warmth of their early romance. 10. Years of marriage had weathered many storms, but tonight felt like a new beginning. The ballroom buzzed with Seattle's elite, tech executives, political figures, and socialites who had watched Marcus build his empire from a small software startup to a billion-dollar corporation. Victoria had been his partner through it all, designing their headquarters and several luxury properties that became landmarks in the city. "Thank you for organizing this," Marcus whispered, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I know how much work went into tonight." Victoria smiled, though something in his tone struck her as odd, almost guilty. She pushed the feeling aside as guests began approaching them with congratulations and well wishes for their decade of marriage. The evening progressed flawlessly until Victoria excused herself to freshen up. Walking toward the powder room, she heard familiar laughter echoing from Marcus's study. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, she saw her husband with Celeste Moreau, the stunning French marketing executive who had joined his company 6 months ago. Victoria's breath caught as she watched Celeste's hand trace Marcus's lapel while he leaned into her touch. Their conversation was too quiet to hear, but their body language spoke volumes. When Celeste stood on her tiptoes to whisper something in Marcus's ear, Victoria saw him close his eyes as if savoring the moment. "This can't wait much longer." Celeste's accented voice drifted through the door. "She's going to find out eventually." "I know," Marcus replied, his voice heavy with conflict. "After tonight, I'll tell her everything. Victoria deserves the truth." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. The truth about what? Her mind raced as she stepped back from the door, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain they would hear it. The pregnancy news she'd been so excited to share suddenly felt like a complication rather than a blessing. Composing herself with the grace that had carried her through countless business presentations, Victoria returned to the party. She played the perfect hostess, accepting congratulations and making small talk while her world crumbled internally. When Marcus took the microphone to give a speech about their unbreakable bond, Victoria stood beside him with a serene smile, even as her hands trembled slightly. "To my beautiful wife," Marcus raised his champagne flute, "who has been my anchor through every storm and my partner in every dream. Here's to the next 10 years. The crowd erupted in applause, but Victoria barely heard it. She raised her own glass of sparkling water disguised among the champagne and met Marcus's eyes. For a split second, she saw something flicker there. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. As the party wound down and the last guests departed, Victoria retreated to their bedroom. She sat at her vanity, slowly removing her jewelry while watching Marcus in the mirror as he loosened his tie. "Wonderful party," he said, approaching her from behind. "You outdid yourself." "Did I?" Victoria's voice was steady, betraying nothing of the storm raging inside her. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." Something in her tone made Marcus pause. He studied her reflection, but Victoria had perfected the art of hiding her emotions during their marriage. Tonight, that skill would serve her well. As Marcus disappeared into the bathroom, Victoria placed a protective hand over her stomach. Whatever truth he planned to reveal, whatever Celeste meant about her finding out, Victoria would be ready. She had built her architectural career on strong foundations. And now she would need to construct the strongest foundation of all, one that could support both her and her unborn child through whatever storm was coming. The golden cage she had lived in was about to crack, but Victoria Sterling was no ordinary bird. She was ready to fly. The media storm that followed Victoria's revelations turned Marcus from a respected tech mogul into a pariah almost overnight. Italian newspapers ran headlines like "American billionaire stalks pregnant ex-wife," while financial publications dissected his offshore schemes. But Victoria knew Marcus wouldn't surrender without a final, desperate gambit. It came in the form of Detective Ray Morrison, who appeared at Victoria's Roman apartment on a cold February morning with an international warrant. Her daughter Luna, born 3 weeks earlier with Elena holding her hand in a Roman hospital, slept peacefully in her arms as Morrison explained the charges. Mrs. Blackwood. Sterling, Victoria corrected firmly. I've legally reverted to my maiden name. Miss Sterling, you're wanted for questioning regarding embezzlement charges filed in Washington State. Your ex-husband claims you stole $50 million from joint accounts. Victoria had expected this move. Marcus was trying to flip the narrative, painting himself as the victim of her theft rather than admitting his own crimes. Detective, I assume you've been briefed on Mr. Blackwood's own legal troubles? Morrison's expression was unreadable. I'm here to execute a warrant, not discuss ongoing investigations. Elena burst into the apartment just as Morrison was explaining extradition procedures. Victoria, I came as soon as I heard... She stopped short, seeing the detective. What's happening? Mr. Blackwood has convinced a judge that I'm a flight risk and a criminal, Victoria said calmly, though her grip on Luna tightened. He wants me extradited to face charges for stealing money he embezzled himself. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Marcus had successfully manipulated the American legal system while his own crimes remained tangled in international bureaucracy. I need to make some calls, Elena said, her face fierce with determination. Over the next 48 hours, Victoria found herself at the center of an international legal battle. Her Italian lawyers argued that extraditing a nursing mother based on fraudulent charges filed by a man under federal investigation was unconscionable. Meanwhile, Diana orchestrated a media campaign from Seattle, revealing new evidence of Marcus's corruption daily. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Judge Patricia Winters, the federal judge overseeing Marcus's case in Seattle, had been quietly investigating the suspicious timing of his charges against Victoria. When she discovered that Marcus had filed the embezzlement claims the same day, Victoria's evidence led to the freezing of his offshore accounts. She made a rare public statement. It appears we have a clear case of retaliatory prosecution, Judge Winters announced at a packed courthouse. Mr. Blackwood's credibility as a complainant is severely compromised by his own alleged criminal activities. The warrant for Victoria's arrest was dismissed within hours, but Marcus's vindictive rage reached new heights when he hired a private military contractor to retrieve his daughter from Rome. The plan might have succeeded if not for Detective Morrison, who had remained in Rome and grown suspicious of Marcus's increasingly erratic behavior. 3 men with falsified diplomatic papers just tried to enter your building, Morrison called Victoria urgently. I've alerted Italian authorities, but you need to get somewhere safe. Now. Elena whisked Victoria and Luna to her family's villa in Tuscany, where they waited as international law enforcement dismantled Marcus's operation. The contractors were arrested, their communications with Marcus traced and documented. What had begun as financial crimes had escalated to attempted kidnapping across international borders. He's lost his mind, Diana reported during a secure video call. His company's board voted him out this morning. The FBI raided his offices, and 3 more women have come forward with harassment claims. He's facing decades in federal prison. Victoria felt a complex mix of emotions as she watched Luna sleep in her bassinet, surrounded by the rolling hills of Tuscany. Relief that the immediate danger had passed. sadness for the man Marcus had once been, and fierce protectiveness for her daughter's future. "What happens now?" Elena asked as they sat on the villa's terrace, sharing a bottle of wine while Victoria nursed Luna. "Now we wait for justice," Victoria replied, "and we build something beautiful from the ashes of what came before." The reckoning had come at last. Marcus Blackwood's empire of lies had collapsed under the weight of his own greed and desperation. But for Victoria Sterling, the real victory wasn't his downfall. It was the life she had built for herself and Luna, brick by brick, in the eternal city that had welcomed them home. Part 5. New Horizons. 5 years later, Victoria Sterling stood on the balcony of her renovated palazzo overlooking the Roman Forum, watching Luna chase pigeons in the courtyard below. The child had her father's striking blue eyes, but Victoria's determination, and at 4 years old, she was already trilingual thanks to their international life. "Mama, look!" Luna called out in Italian, holding up a feather she'd found. Bellissimo!" "Beautiful indeed, Piccola," Victoria replied, her heart swelling with pride. The little girl knew nothing of the circumstances of her birth, only that she was loved beyond measure by her mother, Zia Elena, and the extended Roman family who had embraced them. Victoria's architectural firm, Sterling and Rossetti, had become one of Europe's most sought-after restoration specialists. Their latest project, converting a former monastery into affordable housing while preserving its historical significance, had earned international acclaim and attracted attention. From Dr. Gabriel Santos, a Portuguese urban planner whose passion for sustainable development matched Victoria's own vision. The UNESCO delegation was very impressed, Gabriel said, joining Victoria on the balcony after tucking Luna into her afternoon nap. They had been dating for 8 months, their relationship built on mutual respect and shared professional interests, rather than the intense but ultimately destructive passion she had shared with Marcus. "I'm proud of what we've accomplished," Victoria admitted, accepting the espresso Gabriel offered. "But sometimes I wonder if I've been hiding here, using Rome as a beautiful exile. Is that what you think you've been doing?" Gabriel's dark eyes were gentle but perceptive. "Building a successful business, raising a brilliant daughter, contributing to your community? That sounds like living to me, not hiding." Their conversation was interrupted by Elena's arrival, her arms full of legal documents and her expression unusually serious. "Victoria, Cara, we need to talk. I just heard from your lawyer in America." Victoria's stomach clenched with familiar anxiety. Despite Marcus's conviction 3 years earlier on charges of money laundering, tax evasion, and attempted kidnapping, his influence still cast occasional shadows over their peaceful life. "He's been granted supervised visitation rights," Elena continued carefully. "Marcus has served his minimum sentence, and his lawyers convinced a family court judge that he's reformed. He wants to meet Luna." The papers Elena handed over detailed Marcus's transformation during his incarceration. He had undergone extensive therapy, made restitution to his victims, and established a foundation for financial fraud education. His lawyer painted a picture of a broken man seeking redemption through connection with his daughter. "What do you think?" Victoria asked Gabriel later that evening as they walked along the Tiber, Luna sleeping soundly in her stroller. "I think," Gabriel said carefully, "that Luna will someday have questions about her father. And you'll want to answer them from a place of strength, not fear." Victoria had been dreading this moment for years, but she realized Gabriel was right. She had built an extraordinary life precisely so she could face challenges like this from a position of power rather than vulnerability. The meeting took place in a neutral location, a family mediation center in Switzerland, with professional supervisors and Victoria's legal team present. Marcus looked older, thinner, his once commanding presence diminished by the consequences of his choices. But his eyes filled with wonder when he saw Luna for the first time. "She's perfect," he whispered, maintaining the required distance while Luna played with blocks nearby. She has your spirit. I can see it already. She has her own spirit, Victoria corrected firmly. She's not a reflection of either of us. She's herself. Marcus nodded, accepting the rebuke. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, Victoria, but I'd like the chance to be part of her life, even in a small way. I want to do better. Over. The following months, Marcus earned limited supervised contact with Luna. He was gentle and patient, never pushing boundaries, always respectful of Victoria's primary role. When Luna asked about the man who visits sometimes, Victoria explained simply that he was her father, but that families came in many different shapes. Some children have two parents who live together, Victoria told her daughter one evening, as they read bedtime stories. Some live with one parent and visit another. Some have step-parents or adoptive parents. What matters is that you're loved. Am I loved, Mama? More than all the stars in the sky, Piccola. A year later, Victoria received an unexpected call from Marcus. He was engaged to a therapist he'd met during his rehabilitation, a woman who understood his past and was committed to his continued growth. More importantly, he was offering to sign away his parental rights, ensuring Luna's future would never again be threatened by his legal troubles. Victoria spent the sleepless night formulating her strategy. By dawn, she had made 3 crucial decisions: document everything, protect her assets, and wait for Marcus to reveal his hand. She couldn't confront him based on overheard whispers. She needed concrete proof. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 days later, Marcus's phone buzzed during breakfast while he was in the shower. Victoria glanced at the screen and saw Celeste's name with a message preview. The Cayman account is ready. We can transfer everything after. Her blood ran cold. Marcus wasn't just having an affair. He was moving money offshore. Victoria quickly photographed the notification before the screen locked, her architectural mind already sketching the blueprint of his deception. That afternoon, she called James Hartford, the family lawyer who had handled their prenups and business. Contracts. James had been a friend since college, and his expression grew grave as Victoria explained the situation. I need to know about our assets, James. Everything. And I need to understand what protection I have. Victoria, if what you suspect is true, this could get very complicated. Marcus has significant resources, and if he's planning something... James leaned forward, his voice lowering. You need to be very careful. Men like Marcus don't take kindly to being exposed. Within hours, James had discreetly begun investigating. Meanwhile, Victoria maintained her normal routine, attending her sister Diana's book launch that evening. Diana Sterling was an investigative journalist with a sharp instinct for detecting lies. You look terrible, Diana said bluntly as they stepped onto the terrace of the downtown gallery. What's Marcus done now? Victoria had always admired her sister's directness. Unlike Victoria's measured approach to life, Diana charged headfirst into every battle. Tonight, Victoria needed that fire. I think he's planning to leave me, Victoria whispered, sharing everything she'd discovered. And I'm pregnant, Diana. 6 weeks. Diana's eyes flashed with protective fury. That bastard! We're going to destroy him! No, Victoria said firmly. We're going to be smarter than him. I won't let him take my child's future away, but I won't stoop to his level either. The next morning, Marcus announced he needed to fly to New York for an urgent business meeting. Victoria kissed him goodbye, playing the supportive wife while mentally cataloging every detail of his behavior. The guilt in his eyes was unmistakable now that she knew what to look for. 20 minutes after his departure, Victoria was in his study with Diana and a private investigator James had recommended. They worked methodically, photographing documents and copying files from Marcus's personal computer. What they found exceeded Victoria's worst fears. Marcus hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been systematically moving assets offshore for months. Worse, he'd been using her architectural firm's accounts as conduits, making her an unwitting accomplice to potential tax evasion. The Cayman account contained nearly $50 million, money that legally belonged to their joint assets. He's been planning this for at least 6 months, the investigator, a former FBI agent named Rita Chen, explained. This level of financial restructuring doesn't happen overnight. He's been preparing to vanish your shared wealth while leaving you holding any legal liability. Victoria felt physically sick, though she wasn't sure if it was morning sickness or the magnitude of Marcus's betrayal. He hadn't just broken her heart. He'd tried to destroy her entire future. That evening, Marcus returned with flowers and an expensive necklace, claiming the New York trip had been productive. Victoria accepted his gifts with a smile, but inside, she was calculating her next moves. "I have something to tell you," she said as they sat down to dinner. "I'm pregnant." Marcus's fork clattered to his plate. For a moment, his mask slipped completely, revealing panic rather than joy. "Pregnant? Are you sure?" 6 weeks. I wanted to wait until after our anniversary to tell you. Victoria watched his face carefully. "Aren't you happy?" "Of course I'm happy." Marcus recovered quickly, but his smile never reached his eyes. "It's just unexpected. The timing." "What about the timing?" Victoria pressed gently. "Nothing. It's perfect timing." He reached across the table to squeeze her hand, but his palm was sweating. "We should celebrate." That night, as Marcus slept beside her, Victoria made her final decision. She wouldn't wait for him to leave her. She would leave first. But unlike Marcus, she would do it legally, ethically, and with their child's future secured. She had built her career on creating structures that could withstand any storm. Now she would build the greatest structure of her life, a foundation strong enough to support a new beginning. Part 3. Phoenix Rising. Victoria's departure from Seattle was executed with the precision of one of her architectural blueprints. Using Diana's journalistic connections, she quietly transferred her personal assets to a secure account, documented Marcus's offshore dealings with James's help, and prepared for the confrontation that would change everything. The showdown came. On a rain-soaked Thursday morning, Victoria sat in Marcus's study with a folder of evidence spread across his mahogany desk when he returned from his morning run. "What's all this?" Marcus asked, though his face had already gone pale. "The end of our marriage," Victoria replied calmly. "And the beginning of your legal troubles." She watched as Marcus scanned the documents, bank statements, transfer records, and photographs of his communications with Celeste. His shoulders sagged as the weight of his exposed deception settled on him. "Victoria, I can explain everything." "Don't." Her voice was ice. "James has already filed for divorce and reported your offshore accounts to the IRS. The only question now is whether you want to make this easy or difficult." Marcus's demeanor shifted suddenly, his vulnerability replaced by cold calculation. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. I have resources you can't imagine, connections that could destroy your career. You'll never work in this city again." "Then, I won't work in this city." Victoria stood, her hand resting protectively on her growing belly. "I'm leaving, Marcus. Tonight. And I'm taking our child somewhere you can't touch us. You can't just disappear with my baby. Watch me." That evening, Victoria boarded a flight to Rome with Diana beside her. She had liquidated her portion of their shared assets, retained an international law firm, and transferred her architectural clients to trusted colleagues. Most importantly, she had contacted Elena Rossetti, an Italian architect she'd met at a conference 2 years earlier, who had been begging Victoria to collaborate on a restoration project in the Eternal City. Rome welcomed Victoria like a warm embrace. Elena met them at the airport with an infectious smile and a car loaded with fresh flowers. "Benvenuta, darling. You're going to love it here. Romans appreciate strong women who know their worth." Elena had arranged a charming apartment near the Pantheon with a studio space where Victoria could work. The morning light streaming through ancient windows felt like benediction as Victoria set up her drafting table and began sketching new dreams. "You're glowing?" Elena observed during their first client meeting at a cafe overlooking the Tiber. "Pregnancy suits you, even after everything you've been through?" Victoria was now 12 weeks along, her morning sickness finally subsiding. She had thrown herself into Elena's restoration project, a 16th-century palazzo that would become a cultural center. The work was challenging and meaningful, exactly what her soul needed, but Marcus wasn't finished with her. Within a month, Victoria began noticing surveillance, men in dark suits watching her apartment, following her to meetings. Her bank accounts were suddenly frozen, pending investigation of irregular transfers. Anonymous complaints were filed with Italian authorities questioning her work permits. "He's trying to force you back," Elena said angrily after Victoria's third interview with immigration officials. "Bastardo thinks he can make your life so difficult you'll return to his golden cage." The harassment escalated when Victoria was summoned to court in Seattle for an emergency custody hearing. Marcus's lawyers claimed she had kidnapped his unborn child and fled the country to avoid legal proceedings. "I won't go back," Victoria told James during a video call from her lawyer's office in Rome. "He's using our child as a weapon." "You might not have a choice," James replied grimly. "He's managed to get a sympathetic judge and the optics aren't great. Wealthy businessman's pregnant wife flees to Italy with disputed assets." That night, Victoria walked through the ancient streets of Rome, her hand on her rounded belly as she contemplated her options. She paused at the Trevi fountain, watching tourists toss coins and make wishes. An elderly woman approached her, speaking gentle Italian. "Sei incinta?" the woman asked, gesturing to Victoria's belly. "Si," Victoria replied with her limited Italian. The woman smiled and touched Victoria's shoulder. "La famiglia è tutto. Fight for your bambino. Family is everything. Fight for your baby." The words echoed in Victoria's mind as she made her decision. She wouldn't run anymore, but she wouldn't return to Marcus's territory either. She would fight from Rome, where she had built new foundations and found her strength again.